It's a pleasure to have you both on the programme. Thank you. Stephanie, can we kick off with you? Can you really say that a 14-year-old is mature enough to make such a life-altering decision? Why the need to rush forward with this? Surely the completely sensible thing to do is wait just a few more years until you're of a more adult frame of mind and you're sure.
Well, this is why in Spain the idea is to involve the courts below the age of 16. The court, in conjunction with the parents and the child concerned, takes into account all the evidence of that particular individual case and reaches an informed, not prejudicial, decision. I think that system, which is being proposed in Spain, is ideal. I mean, I have some issues with what's being proposed. We may come on to them in a few moments, but the basic premise that a court, with the parents and the child concerned, will make the decision, I think is progressive and a really good idea.
Well, just on that point again, Stephanie, you have sometimes very progressive parents wanting to push a certain ideology onto children. We have seen that before. This will make it easier.
I disagree. Even in the unlikely event that you have progressive, or as we may say here in the UK, woke parents, the fact of the matter is you have a safeguarding mechanism in the judiciary, an independent judiciary in a European democratic country. I'm happy to go with what they decide.
No, but the parents, if they say it's fine, you don't need to go to court. That's correct, isn't it? If they say, yes, my child wants to change sex, you don't have to get that followed up in court. It's just, it's stamped, it's rubber stamped.
My understanding is that there will be a judicial mechanism below a certain age. Certainly above 16, I understand it will be the decision of the young adult concerned. And it is a young adult, let's be clear here. I believe below 12, there's definite court involvement. 12 to 14, it would be the parents in conjunction with the child. But again, if we're talking about a modern democratic country, if, you know, for example, there was serious concerns that parents were pushing a child one way or another, there's social services in Spain that could intervene in appropriate cases.
You would hope that, yeah, you would hope that. Paula, the law doesn't focus on physically changing gender or going through hormone treatment. It's essentially a piece of paper. So why is it such a big problem, do you say?
Exactly. That's also one of the major problems of this bill that is drafted in a poorly way, in my opinion. This is very important because we can't think that sex doesn't mean anything. And unfortunately, it does. Of course, in an ideal world, it wouldn't. But unfortunately, we know that men, as an example, were widely more aggressive than women, if we look at the statistics. And so that's why I don't think we should also consider transgender people in the same way, because we have to protect women always, all the time. So we have to divide, you know, people who are really transitioning because they believe in that, because they feel they're part of another gender, and that's fantastic, like 100%, you know, I'm with them. But we have to be careful that we don't have some sexual predator. And unfortunately, you know, we might find them more in the category of men transitioning to women than in the opposite one. So that's why I think we should make differences, you know, in the way we accept also this type of transitions. And definitely, in my opinion, if someone is serious about, you know, what he feels or she feels, I think we should request at least, you know, hormonal therapies because, as an example, one thing that makes men more aggressive and more violent than women, and we all know that, neuroscientists, biologists, you know, they know that, is the presence of testosterone. So it's the level of testosterone in their body. It makes a difference.
we will get to some of those points in just a moment. But Stephanie, we do know a lot of cases when people have either regretted changing sex or have changed back. Isn't there a danger of letting lasting psychological trauma, if a child perhaps falls under the influence of something new, something interesting, but then regrets it later?
Okay, let's have a look at what's being proposed in Spain. Essentially, It is a legal document which allows somebody to change their legally recognised gender. Sex, if you may. The two terms are often interchangeable when it comes to the law. We're talking about children. We're not talking about sexual predators, men who wish to change sex to access the women's toilets, or any of the silly scare stories that are often trotted out by people with the same views as Paolo. People do not transition lightly. I mean, one concern I have with the Spanish proposal is that there doesn't seem to be any element, if you like, of medical supervision. Now, that's a very controversial opinion that I hold, in that I generally do support the involvement of the medical profession. That is what we have here in the UK, our Gender Recognition Act 2004. There's just been a debate about reforming that, but the UK government has decided against removing the medical element, and that's a decision I support. But many transgender people do not.
Paula, in the last number of years, we are seeing an increase of those people who are willing to change their birth gender. So why not just remove actually sex designation from public birth certificates in the first place? You've got the American Medical Association saying it will advocate for that in order to avoid discrimination.
I mean, again, because we are not living in an ideal world. We are living in a world where men for centuries have oppressed women, and they're still doing so, unfortunately. So we have to keep track of that. We have to actually understand more why this is happening and try to make, all the affirmative actions and laws to stop this type of discrimination, abuse, and violence against women. That's why, for feminists, but for anyone who actually, is scared for our girls and our women, we have to find a way to protect them. But definitely this is not any type of discrimination against a person who wants to change gender. Actually, in my opinion, the focus of the bill in Spain, but in any other country, should be to protect these people and everyone from discrimination, abuse, homophobia, transphobia, because these are the worst things, and everything is coming from the macho culture, everything is coming from the patriarchal society. So the structure that actually oppresses women and oppresses also people who want to change gender. So that's why I think they should do much more in order to defend these people, because there's nothing worse than violence against someone who feels he's part of another gender, because there's nothing wrong with that.
Stephanie, teenage years are a time of confusion for many, aren't they? Isn't there a danger that gender is getting mixed up with sexuality, and you have people thinking they're perhaps born into the wrong body and therefore need a lifetime of medication when in fact they're just gay?
Look, let me make one thing absolutely
Because we're talking
clear.
about children here, so that is an important issue.
Yes, I'm aware we're talking about children, but in any event, when one contemplates a life-changing decision of changing one's gender or sex, if you like, that should never be undertaken lightly. It should be undertaken on the basis of medical and social advice, bringing in the parents where it concerns children, and yes, in appropriate cases, especially at a young age, the judiciary. Nobody is saying, let's just change gender for a jolly good laugh. Nobody is saying, let's all go and convert the children. With respect, some of the arguments that are raised by those with Paolo's views are the same arguments we heard against homosexual men in the United Kingdom in the 1980s. It's the same old LGBT phobia rehashed for the third decade of the 21st century. It's nonsense, it's rubbish, and I say let the children, let the parents, let the courts make the decisions together.
Paula, you'd clearly refute that allegation.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think these accusations are just nonsense. I'm sorry. I'm totally pro, LGBTQ community. And actually, let's remember that it's because of the feminist movement that the society now is more open, and we actually accept people of different, sexual orientation. So it's absolutely not true. But anyway, I'm not here to accuse anyone. I'm here to find solutions. And I also want to point out one thing, that that, of course, as Stephanie says, no one takes this with a light heart to do this, to take this type of decision. But it is also known that many times people, they also go back. They think, they maybe made the wrong decision and they decide to detransition. So we should actually think about them as well. And this draft of bill actually, it's
well. That's
quite,
my sorry to interrupt, but that's my point. Yeah, that's my point to both of you, because it is important. If you have a 14-year-old child, for instance, who thinks I'm definitely in the wrong body, and you have parents who support that, how on earth are parents going to refute that? Because they're afraid of suicide, they're afraid of self-harm, so they're going to press ahead with whatever that child decides, because the other option is worse. It could lead to death. So you've got a situation where children are making decisions that they may not be adult enough to make, Stephanie.
That's why we have experts. That's why we have social services. That's why we have the judiciary. At any stage of the process, we're talking here about Spain, a modern European country, but we could be talking about the United Kingdom.
Well, why do so many people commit suicide, trans people who change then at a young age?
I'm sorry, I don't accept that. I cannot accept that at all. You would need to cite specific figures to support your argument there. I'm not prepared to talk about specific cases, and I do not accept that people who change gender that then go on necessarily to always commit suicide. Like everything, there is an element of people that self-harm. There's an element of people that take their own lives, sadly. Well, that happens across the board. It happens with a lot of gay children, actually, or lesbian children. That claim that it happens with transgender children, with respect, is just simply not supported by the evidence.
Paula, Spain obviously wants to confront discrimination against the LGBT community. You've brought up this point. I just want to expand on it. What about those who have already physically changed genders after much effort? Is there a danger they're going to feel insulted at being recognised the same as someone who just has a declaration on paper? Stephanie, I'll let you respond to this in a moment. Paula.
I mean, of course, until the society would be oppressive and, and full of stereotypes, there are these, problems. So that's why I think they should focus on laws against homophobia, against transphobia. That's the most important thing we have to do right now. But also, we should just help anyone, who has, problem both before or after they change gender, so there shouldn't be any taboo in talking about this. Because unfortunately, maybe someone can dream about a certain type of life and then they cannot have that. So I read about a lot of stories. A journalist of the Times, she made a big research, and she also found out that people who are detransitioning, they're not even welcome, with the press, because they're kind of seen as enemies, from the transgender community. And of course, they suffer immensely from that. And this shouldn't be the case. In my opinion, we should all be empathic and think about the struggle of everyone. But let's talking about, teenagers, and let's talking about, young adults. I don't think they're old enough. For sure, we have to support them, and if they feel like that, definitely they should live as they prefer. But changing your documents, is a big step. Also, because this draft of bill, again, it wants let you do that only, with their decision. But then they want the court, to be involved if you want to go back. Okay. So it makes no sense. You should be free to go back without the court permission.
I just want to finish with Stephanie to that point about people who have transitioned, Stephanie, possibly feeling belittled, the effort that they've put into doing that, the decision, it can take many years for some people, and then all of a sudden they're in the same level as someone who simply says, I'm a man or I'm a girl at this age.
Look, I've transitioned. I'm not in a competition with young people. How young people feel their gender identity relates to them is a matter for them. It's a matter for their parents, their professional advisors, and in appropriate circumstances, the judiciary. I've transitioned in the way I wished to transition. I'm in no competition with children. I support children who have to go through this process.
OK, the last 20 seconds, if you want it. Paula, we're just running out of time.
Yeah, I think we should definitely approach, these cases and try to make, laws that are pro people who wants to change gender, but we don't have to forget women, you know, and the way they were oppressed and are still oppressed in many, many countries. So we have to find a balance between, you know, the gender transitioning and, of course, the protection of women and girls.
It's a pleasure having you both on the programme. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Your thoughts, Paulo Diana, women's rights advocate, and Stephanie Hayden, lawyer and media commentator. Thank you.
Thank you.